West Coast.
It gives me great pleasure actually to rise and speak on the committee that presented its reports today that I was a member of, and the inquiry into perinatal services. I'd like to begin by thanking the member in the upper house for commissioning the inquiry, and I took great pleasure in being part of it. Having been in the health sector for some 30 years, it was quite an enjoyable experience for me, because I had quite a decent understanding of the system that we were looking at. So what we did find was that we've made some, I think, some very impressive recommendations that will make some significant changes. But I'd like to begin by saying I do think that what we found was we have a good system, and we can always improve, and that's an overarching good finding to have found. That, and whilst I think that was mainly a good thing to have found, we also found something I think quite impressive as well. When we set up our perinatal health system nearly a century ago, we were very focused on a medical model. And over time, the medical model that we've set up is working very, very well. But at that particular time, when we identified we needed women to give birth in a safe medical environment, what we had was a family structure and a social structure in society where the village and the community around assisted with birthing processes and supporting mums and young families during that early infancy stage of the family itself. And over that time, we've recognised, I think, that we have found a good medical system, but what we've probably lost is the fact that we haven't recognised the change that's happened in family. And whilst we don't now have extended family, we've got distance, we've got changes in family dynamics, all very new, and we haven't probably put the social, emotional support, social, emotional and wellbeing support around families, and I think that's something we really found to be lacking in the system we now have. So I want to thank the people who came from particularly Warrnambool when we went to the Warrnambool area and had our hearing. I want to thank Dr Liz Uren, Mrs Rachel Lee, Ms Julianne Clift, Ms Janine Facey, Mr Nicholas Place, Ms Barbara Glare, Ms Marianne Purcell, Ms Kerry Donlan, Ms Melissa Ma, Ms Jess Stretton, Ms Jane Perry, Ms Alexandra Lenehan and Ms Ren Bowie. And last of all but not least, Ms Janine Facey for their contributions. Many of those people I've actually worked with over the years, in fact, majority of them, and they went out of their very, very busy day. People in the health sector are very outcome focused and client focused, and for them to give up the time they gave up really does need to be recognised. And one of the things that, other than some of the recommendations that I will talk on at a later time hopefully, was that what they did note was the Department of Health and Human Services could do a better job to work with the services to streamline and see far less waste in the system. And I think this is epitomised when we see $10 million given to the Geelong region recently to do study on population, I imagine, needs, to see if they need more beds for perinatal care. I mean, surely we've known for a very long time that the population of Geelong and the western suburbs and the western part of Melbourne is growing. So it should be business as usual that the Department of Health and Human Services understands those growing needs and prepares the demand for that demand by having the right amount of beds. So I felt it was a real disgrace and a waste of taxpayers' money to put the $10 million. Obviously, it's important that we fund these studies, but to actually make a big political stunt out of it when that actually should be business as usual. And that's what I heard from the likes of Dr Liz Uren and the others saying, look, we're running really efficient systems out there doing the best we can do, but there's disconnects in the technologies that we use. Some are still using snail mail to communicate, some are using systems that don't talk to each other from ward to ward or from ward to specialists. So that initially, whilst I say great recommendations, I'm proud of some of the recommendations, will make quite a difference into the future, and we need to support families. Let's start with the department and efficiencies that can be found.